Krishna Krishna
Gaura Pahu na Bhajiya Mainu Gaura Pahu na Bhajiya Mainu adhane, jatana, kori,
asate Krishna Jaya Vishnupat Paramahamsa Prakshitacharya Ashto Shri Srimad Shri Vaishnavan Bhakti Vedanta Samara Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Shri Thakur Haridasa Ki Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, नदी मायापुर धाम की जय, गंगा देवी यमुना देवी की जय, तुलसी रानी की जय, श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, इस्कॉन टीवी संस्थापक आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, Go Premanande, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Shri Guru.
Hare Krishna, everybody. So we are truly blessed to have two Srila Prabhupada disciples simultaneously today. Hanumat Prasaka Maharaj and his guest Mukunda. And of course our beloved His Grace Radha Krishna Prabhuji is also here today. Thank you for coming. You're all very kind and we're very grateful for your presence today. So thank you all. A little brief introduction about Mukundadas Prabhuji. Prabhuji is an initiated disciple of His Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. His Grace, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He joined ISKCON 46 plus years ago. I think I was 16 when he was deeply impressed by the comprehensive, authentic, and nectarian presentation of the science of Krishna Bhakti, as clearly explained in the many books by Srila Prabhupada. Noted for his kirtan, Prabhuji has received formal training in North Indian classical music, sings and plays instruments in traditional Bengali style of kirtan, and has made several recordings of the Gaudiya Vaishnava traditions, Sanskrit, and vernacular hymns. He is a scholar of Sanskrit, Hindi, and other Indic languages, and has served as a member of Shastric Advisory Council to the ISKCON Governing Body Commission. He has traveled widely, lecturing for many years on Vedic literature such as Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. His better half, Srimati Mataji, is also here, so we also want to please welcome her. Thank you for coming. So when you were here last year, I didn't bring a garland. Today I brought a garland, but I didn't bring enough garlands. So next year I will make progress. I will have more than one garland. So please forgive me today. ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया
चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथं वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मद्गवीरति गोपालस्मि कुर्यात्कृपया यदि तदैवासान्धयः पीत्वा शिष्येभ्युस्तत्प्रियाजनः। That's a prayer from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his 10th canto commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, "My dear Lord, only if you accept my words as your cows will they produce sweet milk and give pleasure to your devotees." So I'm praying in the same way. Would we all like to move a little closer? Because I feel like everybody's hiding around corners and behind cabinets and underneath chairs. This is supposed to be sadhu samagama, right? So samagama. This song we sang is a Bengali song from the great Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, one of the most beloved poets in our line. And this in particular was a song that Srila Prabhupada loved to sing also. And it's not one that is sung so often, even though Prabhupada liked it very much and sang it and recorded it also. So I thought maybe we can just at least go through it. And for those who don't understand the original Bengali, there's a translation there. Yeah. Let me see if I have the text. It's nice to refer to the original. Okay. He says, Gaura Pahu na Bhajiya Mainu. I have not worshipped Lord Gauranga. Prema-ratana-dhana, helaya, harainu. And neglecting the great jewel of love of God, the great wealth of the jewel of love, pure love. I've wasted my time in this way. This great jewel has been forfeited. So he says, I didn't consider worshipping Lord Gauranga, but instead brought about my spiritual ruin by neglecting that treasure trove of pure love of Godhead. We were saying the other day, Dhanani bhumau pashavashta goshte, nari grihadvare janahas mashane, dehashchitayam haraloka marge, karmanu gogachati jiva ekaha. Anybody understand this? Huh? Those Sanskrit students will know, it's pundits also. Dhanani bhumau, your money will stay in the bank when you die. not going anywhere. Your cars will stay in the garage. Used to be people didn't have cars, they had animals instead. And they'll stay in the cow shed or wherever. Nari grihadvari, if she knows religious principles, your wife will come as far as the gate of your house, but she will not attend the funeral, because that is the injunction. Your friends will come to the funeral, and your body goes even further than that. Where does your body go? Dehash chitayam. Your body goes on the chitta, the funeral pyre. But paralokamarge, when you're on your way into the next world, karmanugo, if you have walked along the path of karma in this life, that is to say, if you have accrued karmic reactions for your activities, karmanugo gachati jiva ekaha. That you as a jiva, you're going on all by yourself. So this human form of life is a short window of opportunity in which we can actually gain something really valuable. And according to Narottam Das Thakur, the thing that's really valuable is love. And we also know this. That's why we're looking for love in this world. If a loved one departs this world, as they suddenly do, we've all experienced, then we feel pain. And if we don't feel loved also, we also feel pain. Natural tendency is for love. But in this world, that so-called love, what passes as love, is actually deep faith love. It's actually a sham. Just like honey in India, or anything else in India. It's not good. So, prema-ratana-dhana, helaya, harainu. And I've been deprived of this great wealth through my own neglect. We ourselves neglected because we're placing more faith in Maya than we are in our eternal constitutional position. And adhane, jatana, kori. In my impoverished state, I'm working really hard, but I have my treasure, teyaginu. I've given it up. I gave up the treasure of love of Krishna and deliberately struggled only to become poor. I dove into a host of sinful deeds. Because that's what you do, right? If you're not feeling loved, and if you don't have any spiritual knowledge, then where are you going to get your juice from? You have to do something gross. And if you're not pious, and most of us are not 100% pious, then we're tempted by sinful activity, we fall into sinful activity. As the Bhagavatam states, Nunam pramatta kudate karma, yet indriya pritaya aprenoti. When we are overwhelmed by a bodily misconception of life, then we're virtually forced to commit some kind of gross activities. Nunam pramatta, because we're mad. We're so madly seeking after loving in all the wrong places that we end up committing sinful activities out of our illusion. Nunam pramatta, pramatta. It's bad enough to be matta. What does matta mean? Ahangara matta haya, he says. Matta means crazy. So what does pramatta mean? Intensely crazy, or proactively crazy. We're pushing our craziness on other people, isn't it? That's what the prefix usually means. It means you're putting it out there. And all you have to do is check out YouTube or Facebook, and we do that religiously, don't we? Religiously. So, this is what we end up doing. Nuna pramatta kurute vikarma. We discussed vikarma the other night. You have three options in life if you're going to do anything but sit there and breathe. You're going to commit karma, or you're going to commit vikarma. That means you're going to be pious, or you're going to be impious in this world. Otherwise, it's an option, you can also commit akarma. But that's Krishna consciousness, which is what Narottam Das Thakur is trying to encourage here. So, nunam pramatta kurate vikarma. And why are we pushed to do this vikarma? Yet indriya pritaya aprenoti. Only out of affection for our senses, because we think that our senses are going to serve us. When you get older, you find out that your senses don't serve you anymore. Right? Anybody who's older than 65, they know that the senses just don't really want to do so much anymore, and they're not able to do it. And you try to eat something that you love, and the stomach doesn't cooperate. So still we have priti for the indriyas. IT industry. Anybody heard? What does this mean? IT. What does it mean?
Information technology.
Information technology, yeah. But if you live in North America in 2025, you might think that it means international Telugu. But in fact, it means Indriya Tripti. Yet Indriya Priti, he says, what is it? Indriya? Nunam Pramapta Kurite Karma, yet Indriya Priti. Yeah, Apranoti, correct. So yeah, this is our position. And it's because we've turned away from God. What does the Bhagavatam say about this? What does Krishna tell Uddhava? Bhayam vidiyabhinideshita syat. As soon as you see some option, non-Krishna option, non-devotional option, then you're going to commit sinful activities. And once you've committed a sinful activity, what are you afraid of? Reaction. Kalosmi, kalakshaya, krit-pravidho, or mrityu sarva harashaham. You know that you're going to die, and after you die, there's no more choices. All you have is a big bill, karmic debits. Some credits may be there. Mostly in this yuga, it's debits. You're in the red. So this is what we're afraid of. What does Prabhupada say? Well, not Prabhupada. Kunti Devi says about this. Pavarga. No Tamils here, I think. Anybody here from Tamil Nadu? So you don't have this, but everybody else can hear. Tamils only have pa. They don't have Pavarga. Pa, pa, ba, pa, ma. Right? That pa stands for Parishram. We've talked about that. Adhane, jatana, kori. He says, in my impoverished state, even though I work very hard, I haven't really gotten anything except suffering as a result. Parishram. So how hard do you work? Pa. What does pa stand for? Yeah, foam. P-H-O-M-E. Foam. Otherwise, in Sanskrit, we call it fena. So, parishram comes first, hard work. And how hard? You're foaming at the mouth like the horses. In the old days, now we take taxis, but in the old days when we used to come to Mathura Junction train station, that was the only way to get there. Then how do you get to Vrindavan from Mathura Junction? Tanga! And there's horses, and they take you about halfway, and then they're all tuckered out, and there's places for the horses there's troughs for them to drink water, because they're foaming at the mouth. We're doing just like that. Prabhupada says the animals are running around on their four wheels, and we're running around on our the animals are running around on four legs. We are running around on four wheels, but we're looking for the same animal enjoyment. Mriga Krishna. Mriga Krishna. So, Parishram, Kena, and then what's next? Bandha. That's what we've discussed. Karma-bandha-phans, he says. I'm caught in the net of my own karma as a result of running towards sense gratification, and particularly sense gratification of the sinful variety, once I've renounced the jewel of love of Godhead. We all have this as our birthright. It's within us. How do we know it's within us? Anyone here read Chaitanya Charitamrita? Which one am I thinking of? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabhunaya Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karayekadvaya. It just has to be awakened by hearing and chanting about Krishna. But it's already there, it's already perfect. We can't really lose it, but we have lost sight of it. This is the problem. Helaya, harainu. In that sense, we've lost it. So, adhane, jatana, kori, teyaginu, apana, karama-dose, apana, dubinu. And we get drowned in the sinful reactions. Any Bengalis here? No? Anyway, Hindi made dubna ka matlab to be drowned, right? Again, I don't know. Maybe it's probably similar in Bengal, I don't remember. Okay, so apana karma-dose apani dubinu. The translator said that I dove into a host of sinful activities. As an editor, I have to correct it. There's no such word as dived. I don't think so. Proper, perfect tense in English would be dove. Anyway, this is what we do, and we almost have to do this because of ignorance. You don't want to see who you really are, and so you have to cultivate a false ego, something that you aren't, and then that false ego makes you work like a dog until you're foaming at the mouth. What does our esteemed godbrother Devamrita Swami, he calls it, we're all hiding in unnatural happiness. What a beautiful phrase. He wrote a book like this. Hiding. Hiding. Hiding means you stay, you don't want people to find you, right? So the two things that we do in this world. Number one, we exploit Krishna's energies, or his assets, that is to say, or his parts and parcels, we try. And the other thing we do is we try to evade his authority, or his representatives. That's why he also says, sat-sanga chadi kainu, asate vilasa. I just came to, I won't mention any names, but in discussing with a godbrother, I just came to the information that one godbrother whom I held in very high respect back in the 1970s, he kind of, I lost track of him in the 80s, I don't know where he is. He kind of gave up Krishna consciousness and he's out there in the business world and just doing something. This is called asate vilasa. Sat-sanga chadi kainu, asate vilasa. Again, if you don't have the sat-sanga, if you're not embracing that sat-sanga, then you'll be forced to embrace non-devotional association. And we've already discussed what the result of that is. Te-karane, lagilo, karma-bandha-phans. As a result of getting into that, for that reason we become bound up by karma. So ba. This is what we were saying. What does bha stand for? Bhiti, bhaya, fear. We're afraid. Either because we don't know what the next test is going to be, but experience tells us that there's always something lurking around the corner, who knows? Just like I remember when I was in Shani Mahadasha. Anybody here ever been in Shani? If you were, you probably remember it. But, I'm looking at my chart and thinking, okay, it says I'm supposed to suffer, right now, but I don't know how bad I'm going to suffer. Because it's true. You can end up, maybe not so much under the thumb of Saturn, because there's a method to his madness, but if you're in Mercury or I always like to say Ketu or Rahu, that's just pure madness. Anything can happen. You can end up as a quadruple paraplegic. That's one possible sinful reaction, right? You can lose your mind. People do it. You can go blind. One of my friends in Los Angeles, one devotee, very nice devotee, wife of one of the biggest book distributors in North America. She woke up one morning and she was blind. She just woke up and couldn't see anything. So these things happen, and we should not lull ourselves into false sense of security, thinking that we're going to escape this, because it always happens to other people, right? Until it happens to us. Until it happens to us. And it does happen to people just like us. That means that it can happen to us. And we don't know when. And that's why we're afraid. That's not even looking at death. Because another thing is that you can get death instead, right? And some things are even worse than death. Raise your hand if you believe this, that some things are worse than death. You all believe it? Everybody's going like this. No, it's true. There are some things that are even worse than death, it seems. And that's why people commit suicide. They don't see another option. So Narottam Das Thakur is talking about this. keno va achaye prana ki sukha paya, narottama dasa keno, lagilo maya. Why didn't I die? How can I go on living? What happiness do I really have? People who feel like this, if they don't know about Krishna, what's their other option? They're thinking they can escape by suicide. But all that does is deprive you of any means of either gross sense gratification or Krishna consciousness. They end up more frustrated. Therefore, there is a fate worse than death. Nobody wants to be a hungry ghost, right? This is when I was in college, we studied this Divya Sutra. There it's talking about hungry ghosts. You know what a hungry ghost is? This is Buddhist stuff. It means somebody who has been deprived of the gross physical body, but they still have all the desires that normally results in a gross physical body. And so they're just frustrated, and it's compared to being starving, hungry, famished, and there's a full feast in front of you, but your mouth is the size of a pinhole. Imagine that. So it's like, kind of like we went to this Texas Goshala. Everybody know about the Texas Goshala? Where is it? Over in like Hockley or something, right? So we saw these cows, and I'm just looking at these wonderful creatures. They're so happy over there because they know they're being taken care of. All of them were saved from the slaughterhouse. And they're being fed. All you have to do is go out there and call them by name, and they come running. Isn't that beautiful? And my wife was saying, this is just like Krishna's lila. At the end of the day, Krishna he climbs up. He climbs up, you know that song? This is a Habin Sangeet actually. He climbs up in a kadam tree, and he plays his flute, and he calls all the cows by name. And they all come. So sweet. It's, beats the daylights out of worrying about traffic on the 610, right? Anyway, so where were we? Bandha, and then paya, and then finally, if you can tolerate the previous four, what have you got to look forward to? Maranam, mrityu. The whole thing, what is that? Willie Nelson said, life sucks and then you die. So this is what happens when sat-sanga chadi, kainu, asate, vilasa, te-karane, lagilo, karma-bandha-phans. So, visaya-visama-visa, satata, kainu. Fear me. I'm still constantly trying to chase after sense gratification. He says he's eating sense gratification. So that's where we're at, isn't it? All of us. Why? Because we're addicts. We're all addicts. We're all addicted to sense gratification. Visaya-visama-visa. Intellectually only, we understand. It's like poison. Why poison? What makes sense gratification so poisonous? Let's dilate on this for a minute. Anybody got some sagacious input on this? Why is sense gratification compared to poison? It's seems like nectar, right? Kam se kam adam. Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, passionate happiness, and that's the predominating variant in this world. Passionate happiness is very sweet in the beginning. Amritopamam. It's comparable to nectar. But only in the beginning. In the end, what happens? Anybody know the verse? Yeah. Pariname vishamida. It becomes like poison. So true. What happened to the sweet love you and I had when they're in the divorce court? Right? It's not a very pleasing experience, but it happens. Because that's the nature of passionate happiness. But actually, all happiness is just like that. Passionate happiness is very acute, acutely painful in the end. Sattvic happiness, what is that like? Oh, come on, you're not reading Bhagavad Gita? Somebody knows. What is it? Sattvic happiness in the beginning It's like poison in the beginning. If you have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, count your blessings. You're in Houston. If you were an Ambudri at Guruvayur, how early would you have to get up in the morning? 1:30, because they wake up the Lord at 3 o'clock. He's ready to go. We have our Mangalarti at 4:30. But, in the beginning, that kind of austerity, well, it is an austerity, put it that way. That's what we're saying. In the beginning only. Later on, what does it become? It becomes like nectar. You put in a little bit of austerity now, and then in the future you're going to enjoy. Not after you die necessarily, but when you become purified through that austerity. It's not something that is never going to be realized in this life. And that's what Krishna says in which chapter? 9. Pratyaksha avagamam. You can understand this by direct experience. Just put in a little austerity, avoid 3 or 4 nasty habits, get up early in the morning, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then, hote, bahut sukha payega. You'll get so much bliss. And that's what he means when he says, gaura-kirtana-rase, maghana hainu. He's lamenting that having turned away from his great treasure and knowingly eaten poison constantly, now he's bereft of the nectar that happens when the rest of us are diving into the kirtan, gaura-kirtana. Not just any kirtan, gaura-kirtana. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's kirtan, because it's a special variety. Okay. Gaura-kirtana-rase maghana hainu. Maghana means kind of the same thing, isn't it? Same thing as dubinu. Instead of drowning in the hellish reactions to our sinful activities, we drown in the nectar of gaura-kirtana. Because we've taken the austerity already to taste it every day. And hote it becomes nectar. And now we drown in that nectar. What else does he mean, Satyavrata Muni, when he says, Iditrik savilabhir ananda kunde nimajjantam? That's exactly what it means. It's the same word. Nimagna, magna, same thing. So, we can actually enter into Krishna's pastimes even. And we do so through the holy name. Everything is in the holy name of Krishna. That name is Krishna, according to Padma Purana. Who knows the verse? Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vidyama Guna Shuktanitya Mukto Hinatvan Nama Nami Noho. Padma Purana says this. Another similar verse says, Nama Chintami Rupam Namaiva Paramagatihi Namna Parataranasti I forget now. But anyway, the same idea. This name is the supreme thing. We're not going to get anything that's not in the holy name in spiritual life. Everything is there. We just have to have faith and chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Every day. And then our pain, even the pain of our injudicious activities, the reactions, even that suffering will eventually turn into bliss. We have read this the other day in the Bhagavatam. Alright, so keno ba achaye prana ki sukpaya naradon dasa keno na keno mariya. So he's lamenting like this. It seems to me, and Maharaj can maybe comment, but it seems to me that Srila Prabhupada preferred to sing these songs in which the perfect Vaishnava authors are presenting themselves as if they're fools like us. Because Acharya means he's teaching by his example. We're supposed to take the hint that, maybe I should consider it like this. And yet we're so covered over that we don't. We think, well, what is he got, low self-esteem, or what is it? So, Anyway, this is a beautiful song. Another one, Prabhupada's favorite song also. Anybody know? What is Prabhupada's favorite bhajan? Also by Narottam Das. Huh?
Visaya-visama-visa kainu.
Yes. What's the whole take? Hari Hari Vithale Janamavainu. Very similar sentiment. My dear Lord Hari, I've just wasted, squandered my life. Who else says this? Vidyapati. What does he say? He says, Karma vipake gadagati punaha punaha. As we're overwhelmed in my sinful activities, or as he says here, karma-bandha-phans or karma-dose apani dubinu. He says this like this: Karma vipake, overwhelmed by the reactions of my past deeds. Gadagati punaha punaha. I've squandered each life, one after the other. Successively, I've missed the boat, time after time after time. Karma vipake gadagati punaha. Mati ruha tua parashange. He says, but at least this time let my consciousness be fixed on you. It's such a beautiful song. It warrants actually sharing the whole thing. He says, Madhava Bahuta Minati Karitoy. My dear Lord Madhava, I'm falling at your feet, I'm supplicating, I'm binti kari, what does it mean? Binti kari.
Requesting.
Yeah, begging, supplicating, in this way. Madhava Bahuta Minati Karitoy. He says, Dehi tulasi tila, deha samarpino. Daya jani, na chadi de. Considering my body to be like a tulsi leaf, I'm offering it unto your lotus feet. I know your mercy. I know you won't reject me. And then he says, Ganaite dosa gunalesana pausi. Jabatuhu karmi vichar. If you consider all my qualities and faults, you'll see that I don't really have any qualities, but I have so many faults. And so then he says, Tuhu Jagannatha Jagate Kahausi. People everywhere are calling you, or you can call yourself also Jagannath. Tuhu Jagannath, Jagate, all over the universe, people, you're famous as Jagannath. Jagate Kahausi. Jagabahir nahi muchar. But don't leave me out of that universe. And then he says, Kiye manusha pashu pakhi jay janamiye. You can make me a human being, you can make me an animal, except for the Tamils. For them, pasu means cows only. So, Kiye manusha pashu pakhi jay janamiye, or you can make me a bird. Athva kita patange. You can make me an insect flying around, these, dragonflies, right? Kundi. So, karmi vipaki gadagati puna puna mati rahutva parasamri. We've discussed already. Then he says, Bhaye vidyapati atishaya katara. Vidyapati finds in the end that, totally ashamed of himself, totally, crestfallen and depressed, really. Atishaya katara. It says, Karaite Bhavasintu, this time take me out of this hell. He's begging like this. And then he says, the punchline, what does he say? Tua pada pallava kariyavalamana. I take shelter of your lotus feet. Tila eka deha dina bandhu. You understand? Tila ka matlab kya hai Hindi mein? Tila. Sesame seed, right? But wider than that, it has another meaning, right? In general, it means any little, any small thing, insignificant thing. Tila ek deha dina bandhu. After all this time, I'm just, one insignificant body. You can liberate me if you want to. You can take me. That he's praying like this. Madhava Bahuta Minati Karitoya. So this is the attitude of surrender. What do we call these kinds of songs? Maybe you can say it's not exactly te-karane, but it's, Vinti Bhajan. We have, he's praying like this, and Prabhupada was fond of this. He sang it. So we have to follow in his footsteps. We have to take the message here that we have to question, what am I living for? And what happiness am I really getting in this world? Should be that if you chant Hare Krishna and you try to do anything sincerely for Krishna, and especially if you're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, that really works a lot. Yeah, then you should, by the time you're, say, 60 or 70, you should get some intelligence in from it. It's not all that it's cracked up to be, this world. There's really not that much here, but people are going after other things mainly because they don't have a positive alternative. And how are they going to get a positive alternative if we're all sunk in the ocean of our own sinful activities and being overwhelmed by that? Karma vipake gadagati punaha punaha. We all know better than this. At least you people do. I can't, me, I'm in a different category, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Bharata bhumite haila, yurusha janma ja, janma shartha kori, you should, if you're born in Bharat Bhumi, then count your blessings, because that puts you heads and tails above everybody else. You can't say that you're not as you're less qualified than anyone, say, who takes birth in Pyongyang, or even Tashkent, or other such places. You at least know theoretically that there's a God, that you're not this body, that there is such a thing as reincarnation. You understand the concepts of karma and dharma, even though these words are common in English, but who understands them really? It's a strange irony, because the easiest words in Sanskrit that everybody knows what they mean, those are actually the hardest words. And nobody knows what they mean. Rasa is another one that Prabhupada says, you can't really translate it, because it's a matter of experience. We mentioned this the other day. One thing to talk about electrocution, it's another thing to hold a knife into a socket. So, this is, what does he say in the first canto? I can't remember now. That's another thing that happens when you're 65 and older. I used to have a very sharp memory, but now you can't keep it together so much. You know that verse, Tam Vyasa Sunam, Upayami Guru Manina? Yeah, sorry. Radha Krishna. Exactly, yes. Joseph.
Yam pravrajanta
madheta krityam samsarinam pranayaha purabhukyam. Yes, what else?
Yam pravrajanta manapeta krityam galpayano viraha khatara ajuhava putreti tanmayataya karave bhinedus.
Yeah, it's the verse next to that one. There are two verses, right?
Right.
Now that's the one I forgot. But you're warned. You're really warned. Nobody else knows it, all right. So anyway, the point is that he's saying that the entire Shruti Sadhana, this one, he's talking the whole ocean of all the Shrutis. It's composed of nothing but the personal experience of the pure devotees. That's my point, at least. It's there. If you look it up, you'll see. Yes. Yeah, I can't remember any of the details, but the point is that experience is everything. Experience. So you follow this process now. You invest in a little, take a little pain. Chant Hare Krishna, get up early, read Prabhupada's books. I know they're boring, but this is after some time you get a taste. And that will save you. And especially in the time of death, we need all the help we can get. There are so many stories. I mean, even my own mother, before she died, she couldn't remember very much. Her memory span was about 3 days. And because she had a pretty bad stroke. It's a long story, but in the end, she had a decent departure, and there have been ISKCON devotees just to make sure that it's real and not fairy tales and mythology and dogma. There have been ISKCON devotees who, you know, they're Alzheimer's, severe dementia cases, and, you know, at the time of death, I saw a video of a god sister somebody sent me, you know, where she's singing, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, because we do that every day. Yeah, you cannot think that it's not going to be, you know, burned into your microchip, so to speak. That's called samskara, right? It has to make a psychological impression that you can carry with you into the next life, or which will carry you into your next life. That's to really be asha. Here, that's our aspiration. So these are just a few things that come to my mind about this beautiful song, which is underappreciated, it would seem. At least, you know, I'm not hearing it too much by devotees. But Maharaj, if you have a few comments, we would all be very fortunate to hear.
Looking up the etymology of the word experience.
Probably the words we are looking for is 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, what's the word there for experience?
1, 2, 3.
The word for experience. Anubhava.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Yeah. I just basically say that I don't want to say anything and I'm satisfied and I'm glad to be here. Thank you all very much. What does bhava mean?
Well, it means too many things. I told you, the easy ones are the hard ones. It comes from bhu. Bhu means to be, or to become, bhavati. Anybody here know Braj Bhasha? I don't think so. Nobody here from Mathura? So, you know, they're they have manabhavata, right? What does it mean, manabhavata? It's pleasing to the mind. We like it. But it also means what we call in Sanskrit bhavati, which means to be or to become. How that turned into ha, I don't know. Or in Bengali, hai. Gujaratis are here, I'm sure. Achaye. No, sorry, che. Bengali is achaye. Same word. That comes from the other stated verb, the other D verb, which means us. Asti. Achaye. Or just che. Anyway. Yeah, bhu means too many things. So then you can derive from it, you know, bhuta is the past passive participle, and then you get, you know, bhuti, anubhuti. Fortune means bhuti. Anubhuti is also something that happens to you with personal experience, anubhava. Yeah, so many things. Yeah, it's too big. There's a whole couple of pages in the dictionary for that one. So you can't really give an easy summary. Anybody have any questions or comments? You can just ask Maharaj and he will kindly answer. He said he's off duty. No questions at all. I have not piqued anyone's interest.
What is the duty of a man during his life, especially at the time of death?
Yeah, this is Bhagavatam. Read Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Parikshit Maharaj's question. What is the duty of everybody, and especially what's the duty of somebody who's about to die? Raise your hand if you're about to die. Yeah, actually, we don't really know. I mean, it's just, we are about to die, it's just relative, right? Relative time. It can happen tonight, maybe, God forbid. Or, you know, it may happen in a few years. I don't know how many years I have, if any. We just don't know. And Parikshit Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada said, he did know that he had 7 days. And you can look at that as if it were unfortunate, but actually it's fortunate because he knew he had 7 days. We don't know this. There was a wonderful Sanskrit verse that I've forgotten, and the meaning is that it's definite that with every breath you take, you can chant the holy name. That's definite. But it's not definite that you have even one more breath. Think about it. Somebody asked this Kirtan singer Madhava, you know, what are you thinking of? Because if you notice, when he chants, he's just knit brow, closed eyes, complete focus. And I said, what are you thinking about? He said, I'm thinking which each name that it could possibly be my last. That's how you chant Hare Krishna. Or as Prabhupada said, like a child crying for his mother. Just, you know, that's pretty intense. But we've heard some things that are close to that. In this song that we've shared from Vidyapati, another very nice song, very similar to those that were very dear to Prabhupada. And in these songs that I've already talked about at some length, you know, it's intense. In one of his songs, you know, because Narottam Das Thakur is here glorifying sat-sanga, which we're trying to have tonight, you know, it's something that we have to appreciate as much as Narottam Das Thakur did. What did he say about sat-sanga? He said, when I don't have the sangha of all these great souls that I'm now remembering, I want to smash my head against a rock. I want to throw myself into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga? That kind of anxiety we can't even imagine. We have doubts about whether he's psychologically stable, in fact. Because we don't see that kind of love in this world. But spiritual life it's by nature, Kani Bhutananda. That's a fancy Sanskrit way to say it's highly concentrated ecstasy. And the ecstasy of pain, I've already said, is the same thing as the ecstasy of love. There's, you know, spiritual life may quite fargani. So, you know, this is not something we can understand at our current level, only because we've chosen to neglect the great jewel of love of Godhead. We've given up the association of sadhus, and we've dove into the ocean of sinful activity in the company of those who will encourage it, like the sinful rascals. So this is our problem. That's why we can't understand any of these things that we hear. But this happened. Just a few centuries ago it happened. Just 1 century ago it happened. What happened? Great wealthy, big person in the East India. I mean, this is during Hastings' administration. How long? Maybe 200 years ago, something. So he was the most wealthy person in all of the eastern half of the country. But one day when he went to take his bath at Hooghly Ghat on the Ganga, he heard a lowly fisherwoman yelling at her husband, because all wives nag, right? And so what did she say? Are dinto gelo. Where, you know, the whole day has gone by. What are you doing? Wasting your time. Somehow or other, those words came into his ears and just struck a completely different chord. And he just thought that, yeah, she's right. Here I am. I'm 60, whatever I am. I've got everything that there is to be attained, that people are chasing after in this world, but I'm not happy. And my life's going to end any minute. And where am I going? I have no idea. What do? Anybody know the story? This is Lala Babu. His name was Lala Babu. And on the spot, he went home, he got a few clothes to take with him, and he went to Vrindavan, just like that. He gave up all that fabulous wealth, and he went to Vrindavan. He used that wealth in Vrindavan. He bought up half of Vrindavan so that the British wouldn't buy it. That's why we can still do Giriraj Parikrama, otherwise it would have been ruined by now. And he built a big temple in Vrindavan next to the Rangaji temple. Anybody been there? Lala Babu Mandir? Yeah, beautiful deity of, I think the deity's name is Krishna Chandra. Very, very nice temple. So he used his money like this, and he was protecting all the cows and feeding all the sadhus. There's another one. I'm sure very few people have heard of. Suradas Madan Mohan. Netrahin Suras se alag the. Liya Suradas Madan Mohan Sanatana Goswami Keshishyate. Previously he was the tax collector in Sandila, near Lucknow. So, you know, he was realizing many lakhs of rupees in those days, you know, some 500 years ago, lakhs were like, billions today. So, one year he realized 13 lakhs of rupees in tax collection. But, he was always trying to retire from his position, and Akbar would never give him permission to go. So one day he just decided it's now or never because I'm getting older. So he took all that money that was meant for the sadhus, that was meant for Akbar. He gave it to the sadhus instead. Anything you want. You want some kheer, I'll buy it for you. Silk, dhoti, no problem. Dhoti, okay. He just blew it all on the sadhus. And then the system in those days was that they would send an armed guard with a tanga and a trunk that was sealed so that everybody knew that nobody was tampered with it. So he put the official seal on it, but it was empty. It was full of rocks. And there was a note inside. When they opened it up, it says, 13 lakhs this year were realized in Sandila. And Surdas Madan Mohan spent all of it on the sadhus. He blew it all on the sadhus and took off in the middle of the night. Where did he go? He went to Vrindavan. If you go to Madan Mohan temple now in Vrindavan, if you come from the town side, not the Yamuna side, if you come from town side, there's a corner there, just in between New Madan Mohan temple and Old Madan Mohan temple, and there's his Samadhi Mandir is there. So this person really existed. He really did this. Lala Babu existed even later than that. His temple is still there. Records, everything is, he's not mythology. He did this. So the question for us, especially those of us who are hungry after money, the question for us is what inspired these people to do these radical things? Look at Srila Prabhupada's example. Ordinary, in some people's eyes, the ordinary, chemist. How many hunters are there in India? Kolkata, or he was in Prayag some time ago. So then, he became so inspired because his guru gave him an order, and he was ingesting this message all through his whole household life. Maybe he was entangled. I can't be the one who says that. That's what he said. But, I don't necessarily believe it. But he said like that. But at any rate, whatever he was doing, he was ingesting the orders of his spiritual master. And he was processing it. And he was meditating. Just like a turtle. How does a turtle hatch its eggs? By meditation. Turtle is so intensely concerned about its little eggs that just by that love, really, they call it Reiki nowadays, right? So, the turtles are born. And hopefully they make it back out to the sea, but a lot of the time they don't. Anyway, so he was always meditating on the orders of his spiritual master, and you all know what he did. How can a person do that? What kind of inspiration can drive a person against all the odds to tolerate everything that he taught? No support from his god brothers, no support from anybody else. And really, for a year and a half, in the beginning in New York City, Bowery of all places, the worst area, all the drug addicts and pimps and everybody else goes there. And Prabhupada was living there. But he used to on his Japa walk, he used to go to the harbor and check out the timetables to see when the boat's going back to India. That was the only thing that could keep him alive in that circumstances, you can imagine. Anyway, but look what he did. We're all sitting here tonight only because he did that. While the whole world slept, he wrote these books. And he wrote these books only for those that he would never meet. Somebody sent me a short video, and Prabhupada is talking about this. He said, I took so much work to write these books, and you have to read them. You have to read them. Show some gratitude. Anybody here as a disciple of Radhanath Swami, you can raise your hand, or you don't have to if you don't want to. But he always talks about this, isn't it? Gratitude. It's such a quality to have. So, we should at least show some gratitude to Srila Prabhupada and give whatever we can in the same mission that he gave to. His Guru ordered him, his Guru ordered him, his Guru ordered him, all the way back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we know his order. Jaride Ketare Koha, Krishna Upadesh, Amaranyai, Guru Haya, Tar Edesh, Tar Sarvadesh. You can deliver everywhere. So this is what we all have to do in our own way. This is where it goes. So I'm just rambling now, but thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I think we can stop here if there's any more questions. Srila Prabhupada.